Welcome to the Honest Hour. I'm your host, Luis Acevedo, and we have quite a bit to cover today. So, the topics that we'll be covering are as follows. Everybody on TikTok can see this, but YouTube, Twitter, Twitch can't, as well as those who are listening to this on the podcast. But it's Putin gets it, globalism is failing, police shortage, get yourself a you know what. Don't know what we can say anymore. China is the voice of reason, is voting a right, and lastly, big families are the future. So, you may be wondering why I'm saying Putin gets it, especially since the majority of people are listening to mainstream media and they're getting reports that, you know, Russia's the bad guy, Ukraine's obviously the good guy, the West are the good guys, and Russia is the bad guy. So everybody is being told Russia is the problem, when in reality, Russia is actually addressing a lot of these problems. Now, I do want to preface with this. Just because I'm saying positive things about Russia and Putin doesn't mean that I am a fan of Russia or Putin. I am just telling you things as they objectively are. I know it's hard for many people to distinguish between their emotions and truth and facts. I get it. Trust me, I get it. But this is the case. Russia, Putin rather, is a truth teller. He is telling you guys the truth, and nobody's giving him the time of day. I mean, why do you think we are banning so many Russian platforms from U.S. citizen access? It's because the U.S. doesn't want you to know the truth. It's very hard to get this. And if you go to a site that is saying Russia is good, Putin is good, then you are going to get looked at as if you're a crazy conspiracy theorist or that you're a sympathizer for the Russians. How many kills of innocents in this war have each side? I don't know. A lot, though. There's a lot of people. And China's the voice of the reason in all of this. China's calling for an immediate ceasefire, but we'll get into that momentarily. But recently, Vladimir Putin had pointed out that globalism, which is what the West wants, is failing. Globalization can't succeed or fail. It's a natural byproduct of interconnectivity amongst people. No, that's nonsense. People celebrate and don't realize who would replace them. Yeah, if it's even real, so that don't matter. Nobody said that doesn't matter. Nobody said the amount of deaths on either side matter or don't matter. Obviously, that's unfortunate. I think war is an evil satanic ritual. In most parts, globalism and globalization, they both have the same agenda at hand. And no, they do not work. Neither of them work. Anyway, so how you determine what's good? By following God. So, Vladimir Putin, in a recent speech, started to basically rip into what we call the Western elites. I mean, he calls them out. He calls them out for what they are. And his latest address, he basically stated this. This is a quote. He says, "The West owes its global prominence in large part of its historic plunder of other peoples around the world and has no model of development to offer others." This is 100% true. Don't think you know what globalization... okay. So the West has taken over by plunder, and this is absolutely true. We can look at China, for example, and see what the West did to China. We can look at many other countries as well, but China is a prime example of this. And when China was very closed off from the rest of the world because they wanted to remain what they are, the British and the United States forcefully formed a new little colony in China called Shanghai. Basically, it was called New China. And they forced their way into China and said, guess what? New China is going to be good because it's going to be westernized. That's the way that they viewed it, was through westernization. So Putin is absolutely right when he says that they have nothing to offer the developed worlds aside from westernization. Now, he didn't say westernization, but the offer that they have is simply to copy what they're doing, not to enhance what they do best. And then he also addressed the fact that they call it, so over here in the United States, we call it the deep state, but in Russia, they call it the global billion. The global billion, and is essentially the same thing. And I'll read a little bit from this article that covered his speech. So it says, a new epoch of world history is approaching, and only truly sovereign, that's a key word, key words actually, only truly sovereign states will be able to succeed in the changed environment, Russian Vladimir Putin said on Wednesday. Speaking at a business forum, Putin claimed that true revolutionary, enormous changes will lead to the creation of a new, harmonious, fairer, and more community-focused and safe world order in this new epoch, however you want to pronounce it. Only truly sovereign states can ensure high growth dynamics. And this is 100% true. And so it says, such a state, the president said, will serve as an example for others when it comes to the standards and quality of people's lives, the protection of traditional values, and high humanistic ideals. This is huge, to preserve traditional values. Once you start to erode traditional values, thank you. Once you start to erode traditional values, your nation is no longer your nation. It has been converted into something else. And so Russia and China want to preserve that. Doesn't mean they're the good guys in this. No, they're probably complicit in some way, shape, or form when it comes to the bigger agenda at hand, because both of these countries are deeply in debt, maybe not so bad as in debt as other countries, especially as the United States, but preserve what? Traditional values. And Hungary knows exactly what those traditional values are. So Hungary had passed a reform in their parliament stating a couple things. Well, they passed a resolution, rather, that would mandate the country's government to push for a number of structural reforms at the EU level, including a rework of Union's parliament, as well as to make the bloc adopt Christian roots and culture. Christian roots and culture. Globalism failing, let's invade other countries. Big family, want a house with my son, 3 generations, huge help with finances and childcare. Yeah, big families are awesome. So right here, this ties into what we're talking about in regards to Hungary, is that no, just because this is nonsense, combining the church and state, although there is nothing wrong with combining church and state. But anyway, it's a very new thought to think it's wrong, and it hasn't been working very well. To think that it is better, you don't have the data to support it. Anyway, in the time scale to support it either. So Russia, with the traditional values, is talking about what Hungary's talking about, because Russia is a Christian country. And a lot of the Western nations are primarily Christian nations. And the only nations that are really preserving their tradition, it appears to be Muslims. The Islamic culture is doing much more in preserving their nations than the Christians are. You know, I was thinking about this the other day when I was going to the farm. If I had to pick somebody to fight with, like alongside, if I wanted somebody to fight alongside of me, and I had 3 options, and I knew nothing about these 3 people, aside from they were men and their beliefs. So one belief would be Islam, to be a Muslim. The other would be atheist. And then the other would be a Christian. Who would I choose right now? I would choose all Muslims. They're crushing it. They get it. They know what's up. Now, if we went back, a few hundred years, a few thousand, maybe 1,000 years or so, of course I'm picking the Christians. Christians got it back in the day. Not so much anymore. But today, if I had to choose, I would choose the Muslims on my side because they're based. They get it. They get it more than any other culture, really. So Russia is calling out the Western powers, stating that there's a new world order that's coming into place, which is going to be different than the new world order that they want. However, let's not get confused. There is going to be a bifurcation of worlds, it appears. And this bifurcation is going to basically be Russia, China, the BRICS nations, and the United States. And maybe some unaligned countries will be in there as well. And so the future is going to be very different than where we're currently at on a geopolitical sense, because China, I think the reason they're calling for the immediate ceasefire is not only because they are being in some ways affected by it, as is the rest of the world, right? But China is assuming I think they're coming in right here with this move to be looked at as the good guy and take the United States' place as top dog. I think that that's their ultimate goal. I mean, you even have the EU that's trying to peacefully reunify Taiwan with China. Very interesting. Very interesting. And then Nancy Pelosi was told to hold off. Uncle Joe is going to go talk to Xi Jinping in 10 days, allegedly. So, China gets it. They're like, yo, we need to stop this war. Let's stop this war. Let's have a sit down. Well, everybody else, the United States, the UK, NATO is like, no, we must keep fighting. And China's like, guys, Russia's kicking butt over here. Do you really want them to keep kicking butt? And guess what? Russia's doing their thing, and you guys are really hurting yourself, and you're hurting a bunch of other countries as well, promoting this war. So let's just end the war. Ukraine, you lost some territory. It is what it is, bro. You did it to yourself. What can we say? Just accept the L, keep on moving. That's what it is. And China's like, yo, we're going to get Taiwan back with no fights. So like everything's going in favor of Russia and China. Am I simping for them? Of course not. I'm just telling you what's happening. If you don't have the capacity to separate your quote unquote patriotism from reality, that's the problem. That is the real problem. So we are seeing a huge shift in the world right now, and many people don't see it. The idea of diversity and globalism, it's dying. It's just not going to be around forever. Salva Ukrainia, you are a deaf. I have no clue what you just said, Futura. No clue what you said. If you love them so much, I don't love them so much. You're not understanding, and it's okay. I get it. It's hard for a lot of people to separate what they want to feel to be true in that, oh, everybody's going against Russia, China, they're bad guy. Thank you, user, man, name, Dev, I don't know what your name is. Anyway, all I'm saying is this is the truth of the matter, and we have to look at it. And it's going to greatly hurt the United States, and we have to prepare for that. So how do you prepare for that? Well, I'd say localize your supply chains. Taiwan is already a part of China, one country, two systems. Yeah, I mean, Taiwan does belong to China. It does. So, as does Hong Kong. They always have. But the West has corrupted that. They have formed new colonies over there. Essentially is what took place. He also calls the U.S. out in their own hypocrisies. I mean, yes, I do. And so does Putin. What is a big family? Are you accepting guests? I will be accepting guests here shortly. You can jump in the queue, and then once we get ready, we will we'll jump in. What is this HOI? I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, so that's what's going on right now with Russia. Russia's based. They kind of get it. was independent after Britain. We won't go down that rabbit hole. But China, Russia, they're assuming the powers of the world. They're now calling out the United States for what they are. China's pressing the United States for war crimes, and the UK. I mean, I called this a long time ago. If anybody was watching this, I didn't call exactly how this happened, but I was like, Russia and China will be imposing sanctions on the U.S. And I think this is the beginning of that. Thoughts on that land we shall not name? I mean, obviously they have a right to be where they are, but they should stop influencing our government. They should get out of that. There should not be dual citizenships. There should not be dual citizenships allowed in Congress. You should be true to the United States. You should be an American in order to run for the United States Congress. So you live in your parents' house. Ukraine is a fascist. I mean, yeah, they kind of are. So that's what's going on with Ukraine, Russia. And then the other topics are going to be, well, this is just one more, and then we'll let people in. So just one more. So police departments are struggling with staffing. This is a big issue. And this has a lot to do with the demonization of the police force, the increase in hostility towards the police force. It has to do with them being forced to do things they don't want to do, and then firing the good officers who refuse to submit to unjustified mandates, if you catch my drift. And so they let them go, and now they're trying to let anybody in. I think this also has a lot to do with letting the opposite of men into the police force as well. They do not belong there whatsoever. It's a very dangerous place, but yet they still allow it. So that's a huge issue. And so this goes back to localizing your supply chains. Localizing your supply chains. And when it comes to localizing your supply chains, it's like, find ways that you can get your own food, whether it's growing, whether it's helping out a farmer, or farmers market, etc. But then also, how can you provide for your family? How can you protect your family? Are you dependent on a national system that doesn't really care for you that much, the police? Not saying they don't, not saying that they won't come and help you if you need the help. But wouldn't it be much better if you had 10 good buddies you could call and they would be there in like 5-10 minutes if you needed their help? That would be much better, and you'd be much more protected, as would your family, if you had a system like that. So police shortages, big cities will be suffering from this. Get yourself a pew-pew and learn how to use it, and get yourself some good buddies who will also do that. I think most people want the sustainable lifestyle, but convenience is comfortable. I agree with that 100%. So let's let some people in here now, and we'll go from there.
Oh, nice. I'm glad you love me. I love everything you're saying, man. I just want to say one thing.
All right.
This dude in the comments, Addictive15, claiming that the USA is not authoritarian. This nation, go read the Panama Papers. Go read the Pandora Papers. Go read, go look up what happened at Standing Rock in 2016.
No, you're absolutely right. You
go look at what happened at Kalamazoo in 2012. Go look, dude, this person is so ignorant to what the fuck this nation's doing. They were shooting at us with literal rubber bullet citizens for practicing our rights.
Yeah.
So, the U.S. isn't authoritarian, but they literally actively mobilize their military against their citizens. What is that if not authoritarian?
Right. So you're no longer talking to him. We're talking. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I'll talk to you. Sorry.
It's all good. So what's going on, man?
I'm good. I'm just here listening to what you're saying. I love the whole localized supply lines and stuff.
Yeah, it's the future.
Riots. That's so goofy. Protesting is a right that is protected by the Constitution, and if you want to call every protest a riot, that means that you are authoritarian because you're justifying,
All right, bro. So is there anything on the topic list that you want to talk about? Because it seems like you want to discuss with the commenters, and that's fine. But there's other people who would want to come up here and discuss these topics. So I'd much rather have them on if we're going to discuss the topics, and then you can get back in the comments doing your thing. I don't mind either way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just come here say your background's based. Don't listen to the trolls. I agree with everything you have going on in the background. China is absolutely the voice of reason. I wish these Americans would actually read something that's in Chinese from a Chinese person one time, instead of just like listening to what Adrian Zen says about China. It's kind of lost. And then, big families are the future. We need these multi-generational 100%. Families to break down the nuclear family structure. And this person keeps saying, look up Tiananmen Square.
I know. Forget about them. You told me not to worry about the trolls, and you're focusing on the trolls. So
sorry.
Practice what you preach, my man. And then also, we have somebody else in here, Taini. I'll let you in once he's out. So I only allow one person up at a time, or else it gets a little too chaotic. So
also the police shortage, that is really funny. But yeah, I absolutely agree. We need to get our communities armed instead of the police, because the police do nothing for us.
I don't agree with that. I mean, the police actually do help, but there are a lot of good people in law enforcement. I know a lot of I don't know a lot, but I know a few people in law enforcement. They mean well. They want to do well. The problem is the system's corrupt. The people that get promoted to the most powerful positions are usually the most corrupt, most weak, and they shouldn't be in the position. It's not a meritocracy. It's kiss my ass to move up kind of a system. So that's the big issue with the police. And what really should be done, as I've already mentioned, is for you to take your security into your own hands.
Well, I won't even push past that. I don't think security is an individual, what am I about to say? It's not an individual's job, I guess. It's not our response. It's like the communities. It's a community effort, right? Like that's why we have the police to begin with, is because like the self-defense is a community thing, not just an individual thing. And the moment we start trying to like push self-defense as a million different cuts instead of one big weapon, that's when our security actually fails. And that's what I'll say is the police only serve to protect property. So like, as far as I'm concerned, legally, they have no purpose. They don't protect anybody. That's why they're corrupt. There's multiple Supreme Court hearings that uphold like the police's right to just protect property and to say fuck civilians.
Well, what do you do then? You just said that the police are there to protect property rights. So you're assuming, so you believe individuals have the right to own property. And
no, I don't believe that. Under the system, they do. I mean, literally, it's written into the system.
Okay, so anyway, if the police weren't around, who would defend people? Who would defend the system to keep things coherent? Because then if there were no police, you realize it'd sort of be anarchy, right? Because then somebody...
the police don't stop crime, and they don't incentivize not committing crime.
Well, that's just nonsense. They do stop crime.
Ending poverty.
Factually,
show me one statistic that shows that police actually stop crime and not show to you, end up to your house after the crime already happened, right?
Yeah. So I mean, there are plenty of places where you implement a larger police force and crime goes down dramatically. I mean, we see this. I believe. Are you going to keep? So stop interrupting me. Stop interrupting me.
The crime rates
I can see now why people are. I can see why now people are getting angry at you in the chat. So stop interrupting me. I'm giving you examples. In New York City, they implemented, and once again, this is hard for people to understand. These topics are nuanced. I'm saying that there's a police shortage. I'm saying the police system is corrupt. I'm saying that we're probably going to go into a privatized police nation. Okay? This is what I think. This is the trend that I am seeing. It's not something I want. It's the trend that I am seeing. It's a pattern that I've recognized, and I'm pretty sure it's right. And so what I'm saying here with the police is that they do serve a purpose. The police really do serve a purpose. If you look at New York, for example, New York City implemented a gun task force to go into the highest crime areas And then guess what? Yeah, while crimes in New York are higher this year and last year, gun crimes have precipitously dropped because of the gun task force that's been going into these very, very bad neighborhoods. Now, you could argue, but crime's getting higher. Okay, but that doesn't mean police don't stop crimes. Once they're focusing on one particular thing, they are very effective at stopping said crime. Now, the issue is not so much a corrupt police system, but a lack of morality among the people. It's from a deprived society that requires a police state, essentially.
Okay, well, this is what I'm getting at. Is you're assuming that like there's like a dialectical relationship between crime and the police existing, which there isn't. There is no direct relationship between the police existing and crime being high or low, right? Like the thing that is directly connected to crime being high or low is the poverty in the area, not the amount of police
that's wrong, and I'll tell you how that's wrong.
That's true.
You go to that's wrong. Because if you go to
but you just saying it's wrong doesn't.
I'm telling you right now. Harvard is corrupt. Harvard is corrupt.
Institutions have done these studies, like the U.S. government has even done these.
It doesn't matter. The U.S. government's corrupt. Harvard's corrupt. So listen, you go over to third world countries. China has done these studies. You go over. Oh my God, dude!
Read the ones in Cuba. Go read the ones in Vietnam.
All right, got to get him out of here. You go over to Africa. There are certain places in Africa that are much safer to live in because of their system that they have set up. And they live in sewage. And their crime rates are lower than going to New York City. This is insane how one doesn't get that. Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Okay, so I actually would like to talk about Putin.
All right.
Do you know who Alexander Dugin is?
The name rings a bell, but educate me.
He was basically Putin's right-hand man for a long time, and he's written several books on how Russia should structure themselves and advance themselves politically. There is one book in particular. It's called The Geopolitical Future of Russia, The Foundations of Geopolitics in Eurocentric countries. And it's basically a play-by-play. They use it in their military. They use it to educate their citizens. It's a very prominent book in that culture and in their politics. And this book was written in 1993, by the way. And everything that is in that book is playing out right now. Everything. From dividing our nation, for one, to invading Ukraine in 2016 and this year, to their sanctions and their ties with certain countries, taking control of certain areas. It's all been planned out, and it's all playing right in front of us. In this book also, it's very... I'm trying to think of the right word to use. I don't want to say Christian nationalist. That's the wrong word. Russian Orthodox, I guess, would be the right one.
Which would be a Christian nationalist, because they are a Christian country. They're Orthodox Christians.
Okay. So, sorry, I'm not
very it's all
educated
good
when it comes to that.
It's all good.
But I do know that everything that is happening right now has already been planned. And I don't think it's because of everything that Putin is saying. I don't think what he is saying is really what he means. But again, I feel like this is a personal opinion, because I don't feel like people with that much power who seek more power are inherently good. There's always going to be something bad that you have to do to get that much power. And the fact that it has been planned for so long, knowing how many lives that were going to be taken, which just goes for our government as well. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's based. I think he's just as evil as everyone else.
No, hey, we're on the same page. I think that the issue is once you start talking positively about somebody that the American culture hates, you're going to be criticized, and it's very hard to get through the noise in that regard. But Putin is telling hard truths that other people aren't telling, as are the Chinese. But as I've stated in the beginning, I'm not saying that I'm a fan of Putin. I'm not saying I'm a fan of Russia. I'm not saying Russia isn't complicit in some way with another global agenda. They probably are. Putin probably isn't that good of a guy. He probably has skeletons in his closet. Fact, these are all things that are probably facts. And you bring up a good point with the book that you mentioned that was written illustrating the exact things that would take place. It goes to show how strategic and smart the Russians are. And that's not necessarily a bad thing to be strategic and smart. You can do a lot of good if you use your strategies for good and if you use your smarts for good, obviously. But yeah, I would agree that Putin isn't necessarily the good guy. I don't think that. I think that probably the way Putin is going to end up being, this is wrong. This could be wrong, but this is just something that I've kind of flirted with. And that is, so in the beginning, I can't really go into names because I don't know how triggered people are going to get, and they're going to probably want to report this. But Mr. Mean Mustache in like 1938, in his movement, they had some really good points. Some really good points to take back Germany, because Germany had just been screwed over in World War I. And then he went down a very, very bad path. A very bad path. So Putin may be similar to him in that regard, in that he's making really good points right now as far as like nationalism, promoting Christianity, having a high moral standard in your country. But who knows? Who knows what Putin's going to look like in 10 years, right? So
yeah. I don't know. I agree with some of the things you said. I'm not gonna lie. I have a lot of anxiety right now. I don't really come on live. But I don't know, man. I just don't think basing a country on religion and those values, when morals and values are subjective to a person and who they are, like, and basing a whole country around that and not being able to tell what's good or bad, because like who knows what's good or bad unless it's like, ending a life.
So you do know. So it's not subjective.
Well, if someone's breathing and they have like a family and they're standing in front of me, I'm not gonna fucking kill them.
Boom. Like, so there is objective. We can agree that there's objective morality then.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then there is no, every single civilization that there ever has been, was built upon religion. And every time the society, in the beginning, in the first 150, 30 years of the civilization, if it's doing well, what is it doing? It's going up. It's becoming successful. And what are three really good factors, or really just one really good factor you could say for it to become successful, is its religious traditions. And then that provides the moral code for society. And then you have smart, good, moral people having large families. And those three things propel a civilization up. And then the civilization starts crumbling once really smart, good, moral people stop having children. Once religion is gone, but the religion that built the society is done away with, which Putin's right when he says that we need to keep traditional values, because throwing away traditional values for this postmodernist way of thinking is only going to lead you in the gutter. So, it's like religion works. And I think that
it only happens if we let it, though.
Yeah, it does happen because we let it happen. Yes, I agree with that. This is true. And this is why You need to have strong, big families to propel the religious state, to increase the moral code. You need, and I fault the most people I fault are men in society, not women, not children, not the government. It's men. Men have failed at their duty. They have. They're not raising their families right. They're becoming cucked and weak.
Sorry, I'm trying to think of something to say to that because that was just okay. So, what are your standards for a man? Like, what is their duty?
Yeah, so it's pretty basic. Provide for your family, provide for your community, protect your family, protect your community, and procreate.
I feel like that should be everyone's job, is to provide for their family, protect their family. Like, not just solely a man's responsibility. We already put so much
in
on
certain ways
shoulders, and we expect people to do these things in different gender roles when we could all just like do it together. That's why I don't understand it.
No, that isn't true. You can't do them together. I would never. It would be very anti-woman of me to say I want you on the battlefield next to me. That's anti-woman and anti-nation. I want the women.
But if they want to fight,
then they're stupid. Then they've been brainwashed. They've been programmed to think something wrong because they don't belong there. The women are supposed to nurture and care and protect our children. So you are right that women are providers, women are protectors, and women do procreate. But men are the ones that are protecting the household from outside forces, physical danger, making sure things are safe. And as far as providing, he's making sure that you have the resources to remain nourished and take care of your child and his child. And then your job is to protect your child from any internal damage that can come its way, whether it be corruption from outside forces, or whether it be, some bad people coming into that. Like you have a more responsible, you're more responsible on the almost spiritual side of things, even though the man is the spiritual and physical leader. But when it comes to the children, the woman assumes that role over the child. And that's a beautiful way that it functions. And so you're providing for the child, and the man is making sure you can do all of those things very well. And it's very anti-woman to say, if you want to go out in the battlefield, Susie, grab your AR-15, but you didn't even do 500 push-ups like every other man did. We had to lower the standards for you because there are objectively physical differences. And what happens to a woman if she gets captured as a POW? She's probably going to end up having some foreign militia. She's probably going to have some foreign military man's baby, and not by choice.
Yeah.
So she doesn't belong there. It just, and this has also been proven that, let's say there's a war, right? Men go off to fight in the war and they have small children at home. Cool. Their child survival rate increases dramatically if the woman stays at home. But if the woman is to leave and the baby's still an infant or very, very young, unfortunately, it's probably not going to make it. And it's because the woman is so crucial to that child's life. I have 3 children. I have 3 young, like one's in the belly, but there's other 2 that are here, and they're 2 years old. And while they love me, they want their mom more than they want me.
My kid wants me right now, actually. He's crying, and I feel bad, but I'm probably going to have to get off.
It's all good. You got more important things to tend to. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. And I'll probably stop by because I do want to talk more with you about this, because I really do want to understand where you're coming from on this.
Okay.
It is interesting. And I don't completely disagree, but I don't agree either. And I would definitely like to talk about it.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right. You have a good day.
You too. All right. Women make really good fighter pilots. No, they don't. That's insane. Stop it.
Uh-oh.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Just wanted to come on and say that I appreciate what you're doing. Your background is based, very based. Love it. I am anti-feminist. I'm Christian, nationalist. So I agree with everything that you're saying.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's hard to find like-minded individuals, especially when it comes to these particular topics, especially when you're talking about gender roles. people don't like that these days. And I find that it's not really women who are against it. It's mostly men.
Really?
Yeah.
I would say it's most women. I mean, I've been doing lives for a while, and I, call myself an anti-feminist. I feel like women are usually the most...
Oh, connection timed out. I don't know if that was mine or hers, but yeah, we lost her. Top 3 snipers in the world were women. I would choose a male sniper any day. I will say my husband is the only one who wants me to work right now. Let's see. I think we lost her, so she's coming back in. We lost you there for a second. And I think I know why you get more women against you as opposed to me, where I get more men. It's probably because I'm a man, and so I'm attracting more of a male audience. You're a woman, you're attracting more of a female audience, and that's probably why we got different heat from different genders.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the case. But to what you guys were talking about earlier, I think with the feminist propaganda, women kind of forget how important and sacred giving birth is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we come from this, as traditionalists, if we come from this with the perspective of women are sacred and special for that gift, and we, I don't know how to describe it, I guess put women who, I don't want to say behave properly because that's weird, but who have given birth on a pedestal almost in society, then that makes that more important. You know what I'm saying?
I totally agree. I think that we should get rid of 99% of handicap signs and replace them with expecting mother signs or families with small children signs.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You're the first person that's agreed with me. You should put...
I mean, let's keep a couple handicap spots, but...
Yeah, but put them in the back because most of it's self-inflicted.
Mother spots too.
Well, yeah, I mean, but let's put them in the back, though, to incentivize better behavior because most of it's self-inflicted. So,
disabilities.
Yeah, put them in the back. Put them in the back. Oh, your leg got amputated because of your diabetes? You got to go to the back then. You need an incentive to stop eating the bread and sugar.
Oh my gosh.
So.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on mothers being paid to stay at home?
I mean, that's what the husband's supposed to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, right now in our economy, it's pretty hard for a husband to finance. My husband does it well. I'm a stay-at-home mom, but for a lot of people, it's really difficult to finance a family. So my proposal, and this actually stems from 1930s Germany.
Oh, boy.
My proposal is to pay mothers to stay at home. Now, this would require a lot of, when this was implemented in Germany, caseworkers would come to these families' homes every 4 months to check on the mother's well-being, the child's well-being, make sure the house is in shape. They were very strict about this. Is very, very authoritarian, but obviously you could choose to do it or not to do it. But yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think that that's something that's realistic, or is that just totally out the ball?
So no, that's a really good question, right? Because you want to be able to promote having families, right? I think the better way to do it would be to remove, as Poland did. I think Poland removed taxes on parents that have 4 or more children. So if you have 4 or more children, they no longer have to pay taxes, essentially. And the reason I think that would be better, as opposed to the government giving the mother a check, is because guess what? You're not really promoting families, though. A single mother would still get that then. So basically, you're still saying
no, she wouldn't. It's only for married man and women specifically. It wouldn't be single women.
Okay. Well, that maybe you did mention that, and I didn't catch it. So
no, I didn't. Sorry, I should.
It's all good. It's all good. So I still think it wouldn't be the best idea because when you look at, I know a few people in the military, and I actually heard this today on a stream I was listening to, which is the reason why I'm talking about it now, is that a lot of the people I know that went into the military, retired, or, were discharged or whatever they may be, their contract was up, they all came out with some sort of injury. And that injury entitled them to a certain dollar amount every month from the government for the rest of their lives. And while people can make a really good argument for that, saying, of course, they risked their life for their government. They were their government slave, essentially, for 4 to 8 years to 25 years. So, of course, the government should keep paying them in perpetuity, of course. However, what you find is a lot of them were like, I felt like I almost couldn't criticize the government because they were helping me pay my bills. And I felt as if I was too dependent on the government, and getting free money isn't necessarily a good thing. It actually can make you less grateful for what you have. So I think the better way to do it would be to remove taxes on big families. And then the husband, like for instance, I have no issue either with this. There's a big misconception that women shouldn't work whatsoever. I don't think women should work outside of the home. If you look historically, women were only working extremely part-time at home if they wanted to help make money. And this was something that they would do anyway. Or they were
desperate and it was during war.
Exactly. And this was something that they would do to like for instance, my wife and I have been talking about this because my wife, she works from home right now. When she delivers her third child, she's going to be cutting back drastically. And we've been talking about little things that, if she wants to do that, she obviously can. And that's such as, maybe because she loves to bake. So it's like, okay, well, you bake, we go to farmers markets in the summertime, and then we start up a little, a side business to where, you make some cookies, some muffins, whatever you want to sell them. Awesome. And then also microgreens, right? You can have the microgreen. None of these are full-time jobs. I think the issue becomes this. People think that women should have these 40, 60, 70-hour work weeks when they don't really want that. They rather have their 40, 60, 80-hour work week with their children and family naturally, as with their children.
Yeah.
And so if they do want to help out with the money, just really quick, if they do want to help out with the money, there's no issue with that. But they shouldn't have to go outside of the home, and their children should always be the priority. And they should involve their children in that money-making plan. So like, let's say my wife wants to bake. Guess what? That's math class today. My children are going to learn about fractions because of the different cups and stuff and how to bake. So you can incorporate multiple things with the woman still being at home. So I'm not opposed to women working, but their priority should be the children. And if they are going to work, it should be in the home for the family only.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Bible talks about, I don't know, are you Christian?
I am.
Okay. The Bible talks about, in Proverbs 31, it talks about women working. But it was always like, they always focused on their families and their children more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like what you're saying. Women have always done that. Women have always sold bread at farmers markets. Women have always, sold clothing and sewed, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So,
yeah, it's very natural. Like I went through this progression, right? Because I was a hardcore lefty in my younger days when I was in college and all that stuff. I feel like a lot of people were, right? A lot of people were, and then you have this awakening. Anyway, and so as I've made my progression over into, no, you should not be working outside of the home. Before that, I was like, you shouldn't work at all. While at the same time, I've always been a student of history, and I've always read of women working and selling like their artistry or their pots, or coming up with a painting, or baking some bread, or doing something like that, or taking in children for daycare, right? Like,
yeah.
And then, my mind flipped and I was like, hang on, I got this wrong. Like, it's not that women can't work. It's that their priority should be the children. Their main focus should not be money. Their main focus should be raising the family. And if they do want to make money, it should be in the home with the children. And this is a big thing.
It can be difficult, like to expect a woman to have, 5 children and then also be making money on the side. So that can also be an issue too. But especially once her kids are older, I mean, go for it.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think that even if the children are older, like what are we talking older?
Like 12.
Like leave the home to work? Is that what you're saying? Maybe I misunderstood you.
Oh, no, not leave the home to work.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. We're on the same page then.
My point is that it can just be a lot when you have younger kids.
Oh, I totally agree. You know, we have twins. They're 2 years old, and then we have one on the way. We'll be here in September. So, you know, we're kind of crushing it. 3 kids, 2 years. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know, so anyway,
oh my gosh, I pray I get twins.
Yeah, they're awesome.
It's like 2 and done.
No, you got like, what was the first commandment in the Bible? The first commandment in the Bible by God, nobody talks about this, but it's to be fruitful and multiply. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but my belief is that to be fruitful and multiply, you allow God to bless you with what he's going to bless you with. If you only can have 2 children, that's your blessing. If you can have 30 children, you better have 30 children. I'm all about like huge families. I'm all about, that's just my opinion. That's the way I view the world is like, you know, if God allows us to have 10 children, that's what we're blessed with. I'm not a big fan of intentionally limiting yourself to how many children you have, but you do what you're going to do. And I'm not telling anybody else here to do that. I'm just saying, I believe that that's the right way to do things.
Yeah. And back to what you were saying earlier about taxing people who have children less, I totally agree with that. That's actually something shockingly that Stalin did. He taxed the childless, and I think that's a great idea to tax childless people even higher. That would obviously bring up birth rates, and that's exactly why I did it. But yeah, we need to have a lot more incentives. We're in this country, we're so focused on the individual rather than the collective, and that's our biggest problem. Is we're only in it for ourselves, and that's also part of capitalism. Like I'm not a fan of capitalism by any means. I think that we're not in a perfect capitalist system. We're kind of mixed, and I think it's too capitalistic for my liking. But
what has happened,
I think,
like with the capitalist system, I read this very interesting blog post the other day on Vox Day's blog. It's voxday.net, where you can find the article. But I think the article was titled "Two Tales of Capitalism," and then it was industrial capitalism and the financialized capitalism. And what we're criticizing right now is the financial the financed capitalism. Basically, what that is promoting money over productivity, essentially. So debt. Like now we're just printing money infinitely. Corporations are running off of debt. It doesn't really matter if you're innovating. It doesn't matter if you have a good product. It doesn't matter if you have a service. All of it's for money. Whereas industrial capitalism is more so focusing on, are you providing an actual good, whether it be a service or a product? You can join Lifehack after she is off of here, because we only do one at a time, because I find it's just too chaotic, especially with the topics we cover.
Yeah, I have like 5 more minutes left.
Okay.
I have 5 more minutes left. So. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. What else was I gonna say or ask you? I can't remember. So when it comes to globalism, do you believe that there's like a certain group type of people that are behind globalism? I'm trying to word this.
Yeah, no, I gotcha. No, I totally get where you're coming from. I get the question. And a lot of people, when you talk about globalism, they think that you're just talking about one particular group. There are, in my opinion, it's a satanic organization that is compartmentalized. This is what I mean. Satan's at the top of the pyramid. His minions, his demons, are Frank Rib putting out the big nose and small hats. That's awesome. They're in part of it as well, but they're like middle management. Okay, they're middle management anyway. But they're not the only ones. So there's other people that work in middle management with the big nose and small hats. All right, this is true. So it's very compartmentalized. So what I'm getting at here is whether they know it or not. Do you know what the zeitgeist is? Have you heard of that term, the collective consciousness?
You just cut out. Can you say it again?
Yeah, zeitgeist.
It's cutting out.
Do you know what
I've heard of that.
Okay, yes. So the zeitgeist, for those of you that are unaware, is basically the collective consciousness of society and the acceptable thoughts for that time and what's popular at that time. It's called the zeitgeist. It's what's governing everybody unconsciously in society. So I think that there is a evil zeitgeist as well in this satanic empire. So that means these groups like the small hats, right? And then you also have your other groups, let's call them the towel heads, right? That have all the oil. So you got them, right? And then you got your small hats. Well, they might not be working together. Matter of fact, they probably aren't working together. But because they're in the same kind of collective consciousness, if you catch my drift, sometimes their work overlaps with each other and they converge, whether they realize it or not. And so, no, there is not one particular group. There's a bunch of different groups aiming at different objectives. But in the end, they're all working towards a satanic alignment, whether they see it or not. So it appears that there's this coordinated attempt with all the most successful, powerful billionaires and trillionaires in the world, when in reality, it's very, very fractionalized. And there's small groups everywhere that are trying to do their own plans, but sometimes they come together, sometimes they're at odds with each other.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with that. I think oftentimes, I'm on the dissident right, which is essentially the far right. Okay. And I think oftentimes we don't look at things. We kind of blame things on one group, when in reality, I think it's exactly what you're saying. Just a mix of different people who probably aren't working together. They're all just evil.
Yeah, and maybe some of them don't even realize what they're doing is evil, because I think it can be broken down like this. Anybody in here who still believes in the moon landing, you need to check into a clinic. Anyway, so the moon landing, obviously not real, but then you may ask, what about the people that worked on the rocket ship? What about the people on NASA that were making this thing happen? What about the company that made that one part for the rocket ship? This goes back to the compartmentalization. Not everybody needs to know the agenda that's being done. So, for instance, you have a CEO of a company, and they're like, this is our big vision for the next 20 years. We're going to consume all of telemarketing. That's our goal. We're going to acquire, we're going to merge, and we're going to make subsidiaries of our big corporation over the next 20 years to where everything's going to be owned by Luis Telecommunication Company. Okay, that doesn't mean the customer service rep who's answering phones because, somebody in Arizona is complaining because their service is really crappy right now and they need somebody to come out. That customer service rep is helping this merge. You get what I'm saying? It's helping the corporation achieve its goal, but it doesn't know it's helping its company destroy all the other competition. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so this is what happens as well. So it's not even necessarily that these people are evil, but a lot of them may not even know that they're a part of something evil.
Right.
So it goes much deeper than that. Yes, there are evil people in the world. There's evil people at the top. But there could be people in those organizations that are probably, I guarantee you, there are really good Christians in the United Nations. I would not doubt it. And Muslims. I wouldn't doubt it. Same with the World Economic Forum. I wouldn't doubt it. Just like there's really good people in the United States government. But the systems themselves are corrupt and they are evil, but it doesn't make everybody in them complicit to that evil, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. So are you like a paleo-conservative, or do you reject the idea of the constitutional republic?
I don't necessarily reject the idea of the constitutional republic. I don't have anything better to replace it with.
Okay.
But I definitely would not call myself a conservative in any capacity, because what is that philosophy? Oh, we're just going to, do nothing. We're not going to promote anything. We're just going to sit there and
conserve what liberals liked 10 years ago.
That's
how I
exactly.
describe conservatives.
Exactly. So no, I would consider myself a Christian nationalist. And
Okay.
I like the ideals of a monarchy. But once again, I can't say that I can't say that a monarchy would be better than a republic. I'm not a political scientist. I'm not an expert in this realm. So I don't know how I would structure it, right? So there's so many things.
So
go ahead.
I like monarchy, and I actually like the idea of distributism. I was originally a National Socialist.
Okay.
Which is like part of fascism.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm kind of leaning more towards like Christian nationalism and monarchy and distributism. I'm learning more about that, so I can't give a full opinion on it right now, but I truly think that could work in America. I think that's pretty I think it'll work.
Yeah, I
nominate America's queen if we have a monarchy. I'll be queen.
Oh man, maybe it'd be a good thing. I don't know. Just as long as your husband's the king and he's calling the shots.
Yeah. I know, it's so funny. I was having a discussion with a feminist the other day, and she was like, well, there has been like women queens, and there's been matriarchal societies. And I'm like, yeah, only when they were desperate. Only when their husbands all died off in war. Only when their king husband died did they have to come to power. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It's like,
thank you. I had this
in a good situation.
I had this conversation the other day on a stream, and I was like, the only reason monarchies can come to be is because there was a patriarchy that set up the framework for it to come to be. That's right. All. And then they don't last very long either. That's what you're at the fall of the empire, by the way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got somebody else that wants to come in here. I really do appreciate you coming up. It's been a good conversation.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I'll probably request when I see you on. So.
Sounds good.
Anyway, have a good day.
All right. Bye. You too. Bye-bye. I sound like Jordan Peterson. I do not like Jordan Peterson at all. Not at all. I don't think he's a good man. I think he is a gatekeeper. I think he's a shill. I think he's attempting to destroy Christianity and the Islamic culture. I don't think he's doing anything good for the world. Anyway, what's going on, Lifehack?
Sorry, just to interject there. The British Empire was founded under a queen, by the way. So the most successful lineage we've had of leadership within the UK was under queens, not kings. Whenever there was kings, it was never as successful. Just so you're aware.
It doesn't negate the fact that 99% of the time, if what you're saying is true, I'm going to assume it's true. I don't feel like researching it right now, but I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But that doesn't negate the fact that the most common form that there ever has been is a patriarchy. I mean,
I don't doubt the patriarchy existed. I just said
no. It's not that it existed. It's the fact that it is the most common form that you will find.
Yes, I agree with that. It's just that the most
That's my point.
Leadership the UK had was under queens.
That's the UK, but not the world. And anyway.
Yeah, well, the UK owned the world at one point, didn't it?
It did, but that doesn't mean other patriarchies didn't own the world at one point either. So, anyway.
No, I just meant monarchy-wise, that was the most successful monarchy that ever existed.
You're talking about monarchies. Okay, we're on two different pages then, because I thought you were talking about matriarchies. So that's why I was like, it doesn't matter if one successful matriarchy did well. Yeah. So that's my fault. I misheard you. I apologize. Yes, I'm not against monarchies. No. Anyway, so I do apologize. I totally had you wrong there at the beginning.
It's all right. Yeah, I was just making the point that the most successful monarchy we had was under a queen, regardless of a king.
Mm-hmm.
Which led to UK being in control for, a quarter of a century, if not, you could argue half a century. So,
gotcha. Okay.
Well, not a century. I mean, sorry, what's it? 1,000 years, not century.
A millennia.
100 years.
A millennia.
But
is it a millennia?
By and large, I think when it comes to when she was speaking about capitalism, I think the problem is when she said we need more government intervention and less free capitalism. I think the issue I have with that is when things are left to the government to control, they just go awry. Like if you take the UK, for example, they wasted billions on PPE that wasn't even usable. I don't want to give more power to people that don't understand what they're doing. Like, I don't know, I'm not too sure how the political system works in America, but basically the way it works here is people vote for a minister, for an MP to be seated for their constituency, which is their area. So usually people vote based on the party, not the individual, which I also have a problem with. So they'll be like, okay, well, I support Conservatives, so I'll vote for the Conservatives. So someone from that local constituency will be put in the Houses of Parliament as an MP, and then if the Prime Minister happens to like that individual, they'll be put as a head of a department within the government. But they could be the head of power, for example, for the UK. But they might have no experience in power whatsoever. They might have only joined politics 10 years ago, and they might have run a post office for all we know. But the fact that they can be put as a head of a department in a field that they've got no idea on how it's run is really concerning to me. And that's why I think government goes awry. Like, in my opinion, the MPs should elect somebody who works within those industries to manage that department, and then the MPs have oversight of that department to see whether it's working efficiently. Not that they should run it themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
I feel like that would be, by and large, a better system than because, for example, if I became an MP now, like I work in finance, but if I became an MP now and they put me, in agriculture, if I got elected, I wouldn't know what I was doing, and I shouldn't be in charge of agriculture.
Right.
It just seems ridiculous that you have people that have no experience in those particular areas suddenly put into thrusts of power who legislate on items that they've got no idea on what they're doing. It's honestly insane to me.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that, but then I would also go further into saying, why would we allow a population who doesn't know anything about governance vote? Our finances.
Well, that's another. That's another. See, people have the problem I have with the population is people have equal access now, I think, in modern age, to investigate things that they're interested in. I think the main problem is people aren't interested in the broader picture. They're interested in individual problems or whoever shouts the loudest at the moment. Like, for example, I know you don't believe in the moon landings, but I'm very interested in space. So, for example, they've got the James Webb Telescope that's gone up, and they recently released images that came back from the James Webb Telescope, which I thought were very interesting. So, obviously, I looked further into that. But most individuals don't even know that the James Webb Telescope went into space in the first place. They go, "What's that?" Like, I just feel like there needs to be a broader educational sphere where they can focus on multiple things that are happening in the world around them, instead of focusing on, I saw a report that came out of America where they were spending 3 days a week talking about gender studies, where, it just seems like a big, like that should be a minuscule issue in society. Yeah. Like that, there's a lot more, mind stimulating conversations to be had. For example, on here, me and you could be talking whether we're in a simulation, whether it's Christianity, whether it's, any other religion, or whether it was a complete accident and we're here by accident. Like, no one knows for sure. I know if you're religious, you believe you know for sure.
I don't think that anybody thinks that they know for sure. It's a leap of faith. It's a leap of faith that we take. Huh?
Isn't that what faith is? Believing it's the truth.
I mean, I'm accepting that it is true, yes, without any evidence aside from what I can logically deduce. But anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked on that. That's my fault for getting sidetracked on that.
No, it's fine. No, it's not. All of this is interesting to me. Like, I myself am an atheist because objectively, for me, I haven't seen enough evidence to suggest that there is a God, other than using the Bible as an example, which is a circular argument for Christianity, because you're using the book to prove the book.
But I would say this
doesn't fly for me.
And I feel that a lot of smart people get this wrong. Like almost every argument, though, becomes circular, right? So circular arguments in themselves aren't bad because almost every philosophical argument is circular to some capacity.
To some capacity, but where I hold my beliefs, I like to use testable feats. For example, like if you do an experiment on gravity today, it might not be, say our whole civilization died off and it happened to be a new species in 2,000 years from now. They might not necessarily call it gravity, but the effects on the Earth would still exist, and they could do tests that would prove that force still exists and it's still applied. Whereas religion might not necessarily come back in its current form if the whole of society was broken down. So, I know gravity is a theory because, everything in its own regard is a theory because we're naming everything, even mass, time. People forget that time only exists for human to better understand society, which, you'd be surprised how easily people forget that it's not, time only exists because we exist. To a star, time is nothing, or anything like that.
Well,
it's just.
I mean, it's an interesting philosophical conversation we could have right here because by time, what I consider like what you're talking about, what I think about in time is like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4. But when you look in the sky, I mean, there is a sky clock, right? So there is like nature has its own clock. We call it a clock, but that measures different times, if you will. I don't know any other word to use of the day. So I mean, there would be a time without us. There just wouldn't be anybody to quantify what that time is or give it arbitrary numbers like 1 or 2.
I mean time in a more broader scale, because obviously that time only works for our solar system and our planet. Like if you go to Mars, the times of a day are different.
But there's still time, though. That's my point. Like,
no, but it's only time by our grading. Like if you go near a black hole, for example, time completely changes in how we view it, because the higher gravitational effect that you have on your body, the slower or faster time is affected upon you. So, like for example, if the faster that you travel at the speed of light, the slower time moves for you, but the quicker the time moves for everything else. So that's why time is only a construct for us to understand. Like, for example, if you're on a plane and you take a super sensitive watch onto a plane and you have time 2 watches, one where you're standing now and one on a plane, they'll ever so slightly be out of time because you're on a plane flying above the Earth, because you're at a different gravitational pull. It's only ever so slightly, but it's measurable. So time has moved faster for the object on the plane than it has for you, even though when you come back to land, you'll be in a measurable time zone in terms of Earth, but that watch will still be at a faster time than what the watch is from the original start point. So that clock has gone forward in time by the way that we understand time, even though they're both still on Earth.
Yeah, but it doesn't negate the fact that time itself exists without humans. But without humans, you just don't have a measurement of time, which I would agree with.
No, but what I'm saying is the measurement of time that humans use is fallible because it's
I'm with you.
By gravity. So
yeah, no, I don't know if I necessarily agree with the gravity part, but I get what you're saying and I agree with you 100%. I'm just saying fundamentally, though, like at a base level, there are things that pass over the course of what we call time. But as far as measuring that, what that is, how long it took, those I would agree with you on that. Those are more so human constructs in order for us to measure these natural phenomenons. It's just a measurement, but it's not necessarily set in stone as to what it is. because as you just laid out with your examples, but it still is a thing. It's still present without us. It just wouldn't be measured without us.
So I still agree. It's present. What I mean is the measurements we use to address time are really relevant to us. So, for example, like the reason we use a year is 365 days is because that's how long it takes for us to orbit. So, you know, an Earth year for us is not going to be the same for a year, I imagine, you know, on a different planet at a different point in the solar system. It's just the fact that, you know, it helps us understand. But I think if you know, we're quite open-minded, I'm guessing, as individuals, the two of us. But if we go to, you know, somebody who's just gone through normal education in school, hasn't really been interested very much, and had this kind of discussion with them, I feel like it would just go straight over their head.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
It wouldn't even be a conversation they're interested in having it, because it's. But then they'll go and shout about, you know, a particular right.
And this goes
like
into
basic understanding of just general stuff.
And I would say this goes into because basically what you're describing essentially is the IQ gap in communication, right? Because there's some level of depth to certain conversations that people just don't have the intellectual capacity to grasp. And the reason I'm bringing this up is it's to circle back around to an earlier point, and that is to have better education. Maybe that'll work, but then you also have to factor in everybody's IQ is different. So should we allow, this is very controversial, but this goes back to the voting rights. Is voting a right? Should there be stipulations on who can vote and who can vote? Should there be some standard of intelligence to vote to say you could learn these topics and you could have a good grasp on the governmental system? Should there be these things in place? I would say yes. I think it would make society as a whole better, as well as electing better people into office. You know, I don't believe voting is a right to begin with. I think that voting is a privilege, much like having a driver's license is a privilege.
Yeah, it's a freedom afforded to us for the society we live in. So, you know, we're lucky to be born where we are in terms of being able to have this kind of, you know, discussion. Like, for example, if I was in, you know, the Middle East, I wouldn't even probably tell anybody that I was an atheist while I was over there, mainly because it's not worth the ramifications. Like, if I'm a guest in their country, I'm going to abide to the laws that's stipulated there, and you know, because it'd be a privilege for me to view their culture and explore their country, but it isn't for me to force my opinions or views upon anybody else. Which I think, you know, what I'm finding in today's society is you've got to either be one line of the political spectrum or the other. Like, you can't have interchangeable views. Like, I can agree, for example, in my opinion, for the broader society, I think that, you know, vaccines are good overall, which I know a lot of people who lean right generally don't agree with that because of body autonomy. But then I also don't believe that there should be any abortions after the first trimester. Like, I don't have any solid points of where I'm either for something for 100% or against something for 100%. But just by having that view, I tend to find that I get battered from both sides of the aisle, as it were, because, you know, they either want me to cement my position on one side or the other, which I think is part of the problem, because I tend to set my lines on where I can see factual evidence, where I'm not saying that other people don't do this, but I believe a lot of people feed into clickbait headlines on social media and form opinions on that, whereas I'll go into the research and the statistical data and then I'll form my opinion based off that. And then, you know, that's why I tend to fall in the middle, because there's usually valid points on both sides. It's just that people generally jump on the points that suits their argument the best, and that's what they'll run away with. So, you know, it's a very, you know, when you don't find common ground, the divides get bigger. You know, there has to be a pull and take on both sides.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because in some cases, can compromise be okay? Yeah. But there's some things I will never compromise on. For instance, I will never compromise on abortion. I think the most logical, whether you have stats or data to back it up, the position to have on abortion is at conception, because it makes no logical sense. Never once in history of the world have we seen something not be alive continuously grow and then become alive spontaneously. We've never seen anything like that, right? We've never, ever seen anything not alive grow into becoming alive. So the only way something grows is if it's alive. So it's like, that's the most logical point to draw. Any point beyond that, like there is no compromise on that. There isn't. The only exception that there would be if the mother's life was in jeopardy and the baby's life was in jeopardy, then you have the choice. Aside from that, no compromise. I see no compromise in that. I also see no compromise in allowing, for instance, since I'm a Christian, I don't necessarily believe in the freedom of religion, because I don't want a satanic temple next to my home. I don't want something that's intentionally propagating evil, whether you see that or not as an atheist, next to me. I don't want them next to my children. Would I be opposed to learning about their literature, maybe listening to a lecture to see what they're all about? Of course. But do I want those people next to me? No, I think that they shouldn't be allowed.
I think it depends on where you fall from a religious standpoint. So, what everyone views as evil is subjective, the same way that
no, it isn't. No, do you think touching
is subjective?
So do you think it's evil to touch very, very little kids, like 2-year-olds who get abused? Yeah. That's evil, right? Everybody would agree with that.
No, but that's group morality, though, that's decided that that's evil. Because if you go back through history, there was a time when, people were marrying young children. And
but that's different. No. We're talking. I don't want to go down that route, but that is much different than what I just described. Much different.
But
Factually,
they were touching
much
kids
different.
When they're married to them, though.
Much different. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but what we're talking about back in the day, 13, 12, much different than an infant.
You don't think morality changes, though?
Never. No, it doesn't. It is consistent, because I believe God is true and God is always consistent. So now, here's the catcher. Here's the kicker with that, though. So the truth is always consistent. However, humans never understand all the truths in the world. We're always learning new truths as we grow. However, once you find a truth in your life, that truth will never change. Maybe you get a better understanding of the truth, a bigger picture of the truth as you mature and you become more wise, but the truth never changes. It's always consistent.
From your point of view, is slavery moral?
Well, there's many different forms of slavery. And so slavery in and of itself, I would consider debt slavery I would consider being in debt a form of slavery. And is that moral? I don't think usury is moral, which is offering interest on your debts. But as far as being in debt with no interest, if you needed the money and somebody offered you the money and they were just saying, pay me back, you're still technically a debt slave. I don't see anything immoral with that. I see that as actually helping somebody out. So slavery in and of itself is not immoral. There are certain kinds of slavery that is worse than others. Any kind of abusive slavery, as we've been depicted here in America for quite some time. But we also forget that there's many different forms of it. If we go back to the biblical times, the slaves were freed after, I think it was like 7 years or something, the Jubilee.
That's under a specific criteria, though.
I know. So this is what I'm saying. So I'm not saying that slavery is immoral in and of itself. It is a way that humans function in an economy, and it's always going to be around. And there are better and worse ways to do it.
When, for example, the Bible stipulates the terms on which to own a slave, and if they can be freed and if they can't be freed, and the reasons of why they will or won't be freed, and how to have a sexual slave as well. I just think that
I don't know anything about a sexual slave in the Bible, so maybe you can educate me.
Yeah, I won't leave now, but I'll put the verses in that talk about that once I leave, and then I'll come back. I won't leave now because then it'll end the discussion. But there's a lot of terms in the Bible on how to own and treat your slaves. But I think objectively, owning any individual I don't think is morally good, because, unless they've agreed to go into that kind of agreement themselves, but when it starts to explaining how to, manage and treat your slave in relation of when you should beat them and things like that, I just don't think, I can trust something that is moral. From a morality point of view today, it'd be frowned upon to follow the guidelines that was set in the Bible. So I think that shows that morality changes even within the Bible, unless you agree that it's good to beat slaves.
Well, we need context. I mean, for instance, I could consider my children. We do, because my children, they'll work for free. I won't pay them a dime, any money. All they're getting is a roof over their head and food in their belly. And if they misbehave, I have the right to discipline them as I see fit.
Yeah,
and many people with this line of thought could make the argument that my children are in a form of slavery to the parent. I'm offering them protection. I'm offering them protection. I'm offering them food. I'm offering them a stable home. But I require out of them to do some work. And if you don't do the work, there are repercussions. So the same could be had for a business, right? A business in different forms. You're never getting rid of slavery. Slavery is just a part of human nature. We have slavery today.
The morality of hitting a slave, though, is now frowned upon, as where even if it is your children, that's also frowned upon today.
It's not, though. And just because, yeah, I'll give you that. It is, but just because it's frowned upon doesn't make it right. Doesn't make that belief is right that it's frowned upon. It doesn't. That's my point here, is that just because you think morality changes and that it shifts from right and wrong, that's an incoherent worldview to have, and you can have no order in your worldview. You can't. Over time, it falls apart. You have no consistency. If morality can shift through time, there is no order in human nature at all. And we know objectively that isn't true, because human nature doesn't change. It always remains the same, which is why we see governments are all relatively somewhat similar to one another as into what their end goal is for their society, or what their ultimate goal is, which is to uplift their society, protect their society, enforce a certain number of laws that the society chose to have in the first place. So,
but it's this, we know it changes, though, because if you go back to the 1700s, 1800s, the morality, it did shift even in relation to religion, because it used to be a sin to mess with a body after death. So now it's no longer that, because science has progressed, whereas you weren't allowed to take a body, you weren't allowed to dissect the body, you weren't allowed to take organs out of the body. There was particular burial rituals that had to be followed, which now it's diminished over time. And now, for modern day medicine, if those individuals didn't go against the morality of the time, they wouldn't have taken those bodies apart and, discovered science to the point now where we can actually medically help people, as opposed to doing, drilling a hole in the side of someone's head to remove a headache.
Well, I would say this to that particular point. The society, this once again goes back to what I said, just because somebody thinks it's right or wrong doesn't make it so. So the society said it was a sin to do that. Is this information accurate? No. So we just got kicked off of TikTok. Oh, man. But luckily we can go back live on MOT News tomorrow. But I'm going to be fixing this here. But yeah, it was a good conversation we were having. I'm going to focus on this. We've been going for about an hour and a half on this. So hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please like, share, subscribe. MOT Media. Much love. Peace.